£5 billion project bringing jobs, homes and wealth to the region, or a waste of time and money ruining lives and ripping up the countryside? Tonight, we bring you a special look east on the East-West Rail link, coming up.
If you get the right infrastructure, you can get economic development and you can get environmental improvement at the same time. That's going to be better for everyone's quality of life.
We look at why the project's happening and who wants it.
It'll mean that my family is split up. We won't be able to stay in the area.
I'm losing sleep. My wife's certainly losing sleep.
I think we were kept in the dark about it right up until the last minute.
Calls for the routes to be reconsidered as communities say they weren't given the full facts. Fears about freight and lack of electrification. We'll explore that too. And joining us to answer your questions, the boss of the project, Simon Blanchflower, is with us live. Email us on look.east@bbc.co.uk. Hello, welcome to the programme. Let's start tonight then with a word from the East-West Rail Company boss, Simon Blanchflower. Mr Blanchflower, the project has been in the pipeline for years now, the government very much backing it. Just briefly, why do we need this?
Well, thank you for inviting me to join you this evening. And East-West Rail is a key government investment which will improve connectivity across this region. It'll help to unlock more homes, new jobs, and to grow prosperity in the region, which is, after all, a globally significant high-tech and life sciences corridor. Well,
we'll be back with you for plenty more as the programme goes on. For now, thank you very much indeed. So the line is due to run through most of our region and affects thousands of people. But what exactly is it? Well, it's a railway line connecting Oxford and Cambridge. Now, for us, it will mean a major overhaul of Bletchley Station. It will then run on existing but upgraded track to Bedford, where, as it stands, that station is also in line for a big revamp, although there are some calls for that route to be reconsidered. Now, from Bedford, there will be a brand new track built to take us on to two new stations, one of them near Sandy and St Neots, the other one at Camborne. And from there, it's on to Cambridge. Now, there is an option to come in from the north of the city, but at the moment, the south route into the biomedical campus is the likely option. That's where our political correspondent, Ben Schofield, is for us tonight. Ben.
Yes, Janine, welcome to Cambridge Biomedical Campus. This place is where some of the city's biggest organisations and brightest minds do their work. Over my right shoulder is where there are proposals to build a Cambridge South station. That could open as early as 2025. And one day it could be a stop-off on that east-west rail route that you've just described. And those who back this scheme say, just imagine connecting up this place and the rest of Cambridge with Oxford and harnessing the talent pools of those great cities and everywhere else in between.
Bletchley Station, roughly halfway between Oxford and Cambridge, and where new east-west rail platforms are already being built.
We need sustainable transport, and rail is an extremely sustainable form of transport. It allows us to connect together Oxford, Cambridge, Milton Keynes, Bedford, some of our great cities.
For the chair of the area's local enterprise partnership, reinstating the line beyond Bletchley will help guide future development.
Without putting infrastructure in place, you get unplanned development. You get the kind of development that's a blot on the landscape. If you get the right infrastructure, you can get economic development and you can get environmental improvement at the same time. That's going to be better for everyone's quality of life.
This online marketing firm in Milton Keynes was planning to open a sub-office in Oxford. That's now not likely to be needed. They say the link will help them recruit from further afield, plugging a skills gap.
It's bringing the cities closer to us. We can deal with them quicker. Obviously, a lot of people are still remote working, but actually to be 40 minutes, an hour away from these big cities is perfect. And again, you know, where we're based in Milton Keynes, we're only a short distance away from London. Well, all of a sudden we're going to be a short distance away from Oxford and Cambridge. So we become this hub for the whole of the UK, which is brilliant.
Some people are going to say you've been on Zoom or Teams for a year now, working remotely. Why do you need a rail connection to be face-to-face?
We have been. I mean, you know, our offices were closed on and off through the pandemic for 12 months. We've hired new staff though during that period, and actually Zoom, Teams and such like is fantastic for remote working, but for collaboration face-to-face, you're never really going to beat that, I don't think.
Willington in Bedfordshire, a station stop on the old Varsity line. Trains haven't stopped here since the line closed in the late 1960s.
This route is now better used to more sedate methods of transport. Since the line here closed, a journey between Oxford and Cambridge on the train via London takes between 2.5 and 3 hours. By car, going from Oxford to Cambridge is just over 2 hours. East West Rail says their route will link the two university cities in just 95 minutes.
It's fairly absurd that to get from Oxford to Cambridge now, you're better to go through London. You know, that cannot be right.
The head of Cranfield University hoping EWR will boost knowledge transfer and attract staff.
Our strongest resource and our biggest resource in all of our universities is our people. And I want to make sure that our people live in an area of the country that is well connected for both their professional and their personal lives.
The government says with the right investment, the economic output of the Oxford to Cambridge arc could double to over £200 billion by 2050. Installing better rail links remains part of that plan.
Ben, clearly we can see from your report there are lots of people who do want this track, but equally there are lots who don't. And in fact, last night there were some councillors in Bedford calling for East West Rail to, well, I guess go back to the drawing board really and reconsider all 5 route options they originally had for that town.
Yes, a council meeting in Bedford that dragged on for some 4 hours, involving, according to those watching, anger and acrimony. On the agenda was the Borough Council's response to the current consultation that East West Rail is running. The Conservative group floated a motion which called for that consultation to be scrapped and rerun. They say that Bedford Borough Council's approach to the consultation was fundamentally flawed and that the council had failed to consider all the route options properly, including concerns from residents about noise from freight and the number of houses that would need to be demolished to make way for the particular route option that the council was backing. The motion in the end was defeated by votes from Labour and the Liberal Democrats. However, there are concerns from residents that are shared by the Conservatives about how these consultations have been run, and that is something that our colleague John Ironmonger has been investigating.
Punching its way through Bedford town centre and veering northeast into the countryside, Route E is the so-called preferred option. But preferred by whom? For hundreds, if not thousands, of furious residents, Route E is the hated option, and there is growing disquiet that their voices have been ignored by council leaders whose minds were fixed, whatever the cost. Early in 2019, Bedford Borough Council spent £125,000 of taxpayers' money on a consultancy company to produce 2 reports which we've been able to obtain. The first report finds that the Route E option doesn't have much to recommend it, but the second report, commissioned just a month later, takes a very different tone. This time, Route E is presented as a sort of done deal, and there are 13 references to the council's clear goal of providing a station in the centre of Bedford. A council spokesman said they didn't spend £125,000 and that the decision to adopt Route E was made by East West Rail. A decision, nonetheless, with drastic implications for people in the Poets area, whose houses could be demolished to make way for 2 new lines to the east. Maria found out just 10 days after moving into her new home.
I received the letter actually through my door, and with a lovely colourful map stating all the numbers with all the houses, colour black, they are going to be demolished. I'm not going quietly. I mean, I'm like a dog with a bone. I hate injustice.
So why did residents have to wait until March this year to find out their homes could be flattened? This diagram shows East West Rail knew in 2018. As for the mayor, he was unsure when we asked him last month.
When did you first find out that your preferred route option put houses at risk?
I think when they published the map, so it would be probably early 2020, but I'd have to confirm the exact date.
The mayor has since confirmed that he was informed in July 2019, but said that at the time it was only a rumour. Further afield, there is a feeling in rural villages on Route E that the 2019 consultation was deliberately underplayed. In Roxton, Kim is facing the prospect of a 12-foot embankment at the back of her property.
East West Rail and Bedford Council did very little to consult us, particularly here in Roxton. What they did was put a notification in a virtual newspaper, which very few people actually read from around here. Very few of us actually knew about it.
East West Rail is touted as a passenger service. Nonetheless, it is future-proofing the line to meet green targets of moving to rail freight over road. So what could this mean for Bedford's residents? As chair of the Transport Strategy for England's economic heartland, Mayor Dave Hodgson has argued for up to 20 freight trains a day to run on the line, providing an obvious benefit to businesses like this Covanta facility in Stewartby.
When this huge incinerator comes online, it's expected to take 180,000 tonnes of untreated black bin waste from Norfolk every year. Now, Covanta chose the site because of the potential for future rail transport, and given its proximity to the East-West Rail line, it seems very reasonable to believe that Norfolk's waste could come here via Bedford town centre.
Covanta told us the plan remains a future option following the upgrade of the network. East West Rail says it will reveal more details about freight transport at the next consultation. That's assuming they resist mounting pressure to repeat the first. John Ironmonger, BBC Look East.
Well, let's talk about that mounting pressure to reconsider routes, because I can't begin to tell you just how many people have complained to us about the consultation, particularly over the chosen route at Bedford. They simply do not feel the process was transparent. This is just one example.
East West Rail refuses to explain how Route E, which was the most expensive, amazingly became the cheapest after the public consultation closed. Stop giving us meaningless data. Give us the end-to-end costs of all 5 routes.
Well, let's bring in Simon Blanchflower, the boss of the East West Rail Company. Mr. Blanchflower, you can hear here, people simply cannot understand why you chose the route you did. A group of councillors wanting you to review it all. This does affect people's lives. Why not draw a line under the whole thing by committing right now to looking at all of those 5 options again with the full facts and allowing people to make an informed opinion?
We did a very thorough consultation back in 2019 when we looked at all 5 of those route options, consulted widely on them. So we consulted through making people aware through 130,000 postcards that were posted to people that the event was happening. We put publicity in local newspapers. We publicised events that were taking place and had a very good response rate. We had much better response rates, for instance, than consultations around the A428 or indeed local authority, local plan consultation. So a very high take up in terms of the consultation engagement back in 2019.
Although, just to interrupt there for a second, yes, you did leaflet, you did place advertisements. Some people still don't feel they knew anything about it. But the other thing is they don't feel they know enough about it. The fact that the route E would be chosen, no one thought that was going to happen, because at the initial consultation process, it was the most expensive option. It then became one of the cheapest and more viable. At that change, should you not have reconsulted the public?
So the choice of route E as our preferred route option, which was confirmed by the Secretary of State in January 2020, was based on a whole range of assessment factors. We have published all our cost data on our website. So, the cost data of responding to the particular comment or question that was earlier in this programme, all our cost data regarding those 5 route options is published on our website. We looked at a range of assessment criteria around transport benefits, economic benefits, housing benefits, in terms of impact on the environment. And route E scored highly, very highly on 4 out of our 5 key assessment criteria. So it was a strong candidate, and as we put all that information together and presented that in terms of our recommendations to the Secretary of State, he agreed with our recommendation that route E should become the preferred route.
So just very briefly, as we obviously have much more to talk about here, you won't be going back to the drawing board. You are forging ahead with route E, yes?
So that is our preferred route option as we go through our continuing design evolution process. that we will continue to back check options. We've done that as part of this consultation, as we back checked the routes into Cambridge, which I'm sure we'll touch upon later in this interview.
We certainly will. In fact, we can do that now. Mr. Blanchflower, thank you very much indeed, because yes, the other place where the route is causing huge concern is from Cambourne into Cambridge. Now, at the moment, the southern route is the one being pursued, but many, including the newly elected Mayor for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, feel that the northern option via Northstowe should be given equal consideration. But what of the people who live along that route? Well, this is the story of one viewer from Dry Drayton who got in touch with us.
My name's Fiona Peck and we are in Springhill Stables in Dry Drayton. Springhill Stables has been established for 21 years now. It started off as a field. It's been slowly built, homegrown over the time through blood, sweat and tears. 90% of our horses are rescue and rehabilitated. We also have some special needs schools for traumatised children, which again gives them respite and helps them develop in many different ways. The message to the people doing the East West Rail are we do not want a train line running from Cambridge to Oxford. The train line is, according to the plans, due to run from where that large tree is there. The horses are very close in their field, about where the train line would be. We certainly wouldn't be able to use this land for keeping animals. We wouldn't be able to use our arenas or stabling because the noise from the trains, it just wouldn't be safe to keep flight animals that close. If this was to go ahead, then it would be detrimental to not only the environment we're living in, it would mean, for us personally, loss of housing for 42 horses. Then most of our horses would not be able to be rehomed because of what they were. So it would be heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking if this was to happen. And 21 years of life's work gone, completely gone, and it wouldn't be replaceable.
Well, aside from the routes, people are also anxious about the number of homes this project will bring, how much freight will use the line and why it's not being electrified given the government's targets for reducing emissions. Rail engineering specialists say it costs around half as much to electrify a line while it's being built as it would do retrospectively. Our science correspondent Richard Westcott reports.
One of the big unanswered questions about East West Rail is how many freight trains it'll carry and at what time of night. They simply haven't decided yet, and there may not be an answer for months.
So where we're standing now, the new line would effectively come through us, would it?
Exactly, yes. It would diverge off the Midland Main Line behind where I'm standing, come through where we're standing now, and then it would curve round underneath the bypass over there and then loop round the north side of town.
John Kell is a Bedford-based policy analyst and rail blogger.
It will cost more money to build the infrastructure to accommodate freight trains, and the Treasury might decide not to do that at all. They've already decided not to electrify it, just to save some cash. A very questionable decision. It's not going to be a super useful line for freight as things stand. In order to make it really useful for freight, you would have to build other bits of infrastructure to take spurs off the line in different places, and they're not currently planned. So as things stand, it will be somewhat useful for freight. There might be some. It would have been very helpful if East West Rail could have said more about exactly how much there might be at this stage.
The campaign to protect rural England says it wants a green railway, but the current proposals would damage the environment.
The list goes on. I mean, they start with a diesel rather than an electric railway. They take the railway through an urban area, a railway which is going to carry freight as well as passengers. Then they come through pristine open countryside, and they're having to build massive viaducts, 15 metres high, 2 double-decker buses in height, some of them stretching almost half a kilometre, eating up acres and acres of countryside.
And their biggest concern isn't so much the railway, but the plans to build homes along the route.
Well, this is all about the Oxford-Cambridge corridor and the government's plans for 1 million homes along the corridor, 85 miles long, 20 cities the size of Cambridge, and an increase in the population of 1.9 million people.
There will be young people watching this who can't get on the housing ladder. We all know there's a shortage of housing. The housing market's gone through the roof at the moment. No one can afford a house. You've got to build them somewhere.
These housing plans for the Oxford-Cambridge Arc aren't anything to do with providing homes for local people, the people of Bedford Borough or the people of Bedfordshire. This is all about encouraging massive population movements from elsewhere in the country to Bedford or to the Oxford-Cambridge Arc.
The routes, the new houses, the fact it's diesel, not electric, the role of freight. There's still lots of controversy and uncertainty over this project. Richard Westcott, BBC Look East, Bedfordshire.
Well, let's come back to Simon Blanchflower, the boss of the East West Rail Company. Those reports there, they touched on issues that people do have a lot of questions about. So let's start, if we can, with freight and electrification. Elizabeth Hills is saying diesel cars are being banned. Why is this route being built for diesel trains? It's not good enough. What would you say?
Our ambition is for a net zero carbon railway, and we're very clear about that in terms of what we're saying publicly. There is a drive to get this railway open as soon as practicable, and for the first section of the railway between Oxford and Milton Keynes, we will be using diesel trains as part of getting that section of the railway open as quickly as possible. But as we move across the region, our ambition is to move to green energy sources to be able to do that, and we're doing studies at the moment. We're engaged with government about how best to make sure that we have a low impact traction power getting to the trains. So it's certainly our ambitions. We share those ambitions, and the government has already made commitments around the removal of diesel only powered trains from the network by 2040, and we would want to be well in advance of that.
We know that when it comes to the number of freight trains using this service, that is a decision for the Department for Transport. They've told us they haven't decided yet. Brian here in Milton Keynes making the point that actually taking freight off the roads, that cuts emissions. Roger in Hitchin, though, telling us tonight we must exploit this line to the full extent and electrify it. Moving on to housing, we mentioned that a moment ago. We've had this question in from Steph. Here it is.
The Oxcam ARC proposes 1 million houses and over 1 million jobs by 2050. How can you consult on this railway without presenting plans for those as well? Without that, where's the business case?
So again, it comes back to the full facts. If you don't know where the houses are going, how can you make an informed opinion? What would you say?
Well, government is progressing with its spatial vision for the ARC at the moment and consulting on that. Ultimately, it's decisions for government in conjunction with local authorities around where exactly the housing goes, and that will be developed over the coming years. But East West Rail is part of that upfront investment that's needed to ensure there's good, reliable public transport across the area, both for current communities and for future communities as they grow over the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I think the argument from a lot of people is the detail is still too vague to have a proper say on. I want to move on to Dr. James Perry. He says the northern route into Cambridge seems to have been dismissed on the basis it would take 4 tracks to accommodate the trains. He says he studied the timetables and a small tweak at Cambridge would allow things to run on 2 lines. He wants to know if you've considered what he calls this much simpler solution.
So as part of the consultation documents we've put out there, and is it just worth referring also to the lady from Dry Drayton? None of our route alignments, proposed route alignments, go through Dry Drayton. It is on the northern route into Cambridge, which, as part of our back-checking process, we've come to the conclusion that the southern route is remains the preferred route. So I just want to reassure your viewer in Dry Drayton. And in terms of the route into Cambridge from the north, we've looked at that in quite a lot of detail, and that's in our consultation documents. There's a variety of complications of that route in terms of both the floodplains north of Cambridge, the need to 4-track, and we have looked at this in quite some detail through North Cambridge Station, Cambridge North Station, and down into Cambridge from the north, which would require the taking of a significant number of properties in that corridor. So we've looked at all that in quite some detail. All that information is presented in our consultation documents, and we remain convinced that the southern approach into Cambridge is the right one to take.
Heather is in Bedford. Heather's been in touch with us, says she's lived in Bedford all her life. She's very much in favour of East West Rail. But some people in Bedford whose homes will be demolished are saying they are being offered 15% below market value for them, which means they're losing their home and their money. Is that something you'll look again at, that offer?
So we're consulting at the moment on a discretionary purchase scheme, and we would encourage people to respond to that aspect of the consultation. That puts in place a need to sell scheme for people who are directly impacted by East West Rail. We've got a team of land specialists who are available to talk to people on an individual basis, and that's really important because each individual circumstances are particular to them. So we would encourage people to get in contact with us if they've got any concerns about their property, and we'll be able to speak to them with our specialist land team, and also encourage people to respond to that part of the consultation around this discretionary purchase scheme.
Simon Blanchflower, thank you. Clearly, we can never get through all of the questions in the time that we have, and I know that more questions are coming in. For now, thank you very much indeed. Well, time to get the latest weather forecast now. Here's Alex.
Hello, cooler, cloudier weather on the way over the next 24 hours with the chance of some showery rain. We've had another very warm day across the region, but it wasn't quite as hot as yesterday with highs of 24 Celsius, a lovely scene here in Bedfordshire. So through the evening, increasing amounts of clouds, some showery outbreaks of rain. There could even be the odd rumble of thunder. Quite a warm and muggy night, so our temperatures staying in the teens for many of us. So we start the day tomorrow with quite a lot of cloud around, and it's associated with this low pressure weather system here, so that just sort of lingers across eastern counties. So across the west, expect a fairly cloudy day. There could be some showery outbreaks of rain. Some places will stay dry, with this rain expected to mainly linger across eastern coasts, and temperatures under a lot more cloud are going to be cooler than they have been over the last couple of days. So 20, perhaps 21 Celsius are expected high. And into the afternoon, although that rain tends to linger across those eastern coasts, the west, perhaps a little bit of brightness coming through, maybe even some sunshine before the end of the day. So high pressure builds back in for the weekend, so we're expecting lots of fine and dry weather. There could be some isolated showers around, particularly on Sunday, but for Saturday it looks as though we'll see lots of sunshine. The cloud will build into the afternoon. Temperatures, well, they're going to get into the 20s, but still not quite as warm as they have been, 21 or 22 degrees. So here's our high for Monday. The start of next week, it's looking pretty settled, and temperatures will tend to build back up by the middle of next week. But before then, we've got a little bit of a cooler forecast. There should be quite a lot of sunshine around into the weekend and for the start of next week, and then it turns quite a bit warmer by midweek next week.
Well, East West Rail, it aims to connect people, but as we've seen, it's also tearing communities apart. More of your emails here. We have had one from Brian saying it will be a fabulous asset for the region. The Victorians built for their grandchildren. We should be doing the same. We've had one here from Carrie who says the Oxford-Cambridge line has been planned for a long time now, but the landscape has changed since the coronavirus pandemic. Will there still be the passengers to warrant it? And another one here saying, would the people involved in this project be happy to have a 10-metre embankment going through their back garden with the associated noise? Well, the current consultation ends next week. We are going to be looking at a few more of these issues on tomorrow's programme, so do keep your questions coming. But that's all from us for now. Thanks for watching and take